I'm going to begin by having a conversation with Luis and Maybrit, and then I'm going to bring in 3 young scientists to join the conversation, and I'm also going to try and find time to get some comments and questions from the audience. Got a lot to pack in, so we'll get going. The responsibilities of scientists. It's a huge topic. It's perhaps something that scientists themselves don't think about so much when they're pursuing their scientific career, because you get on with doing your science and getting the results out and communicating. And do you stop to ask, what are my responsibilities? I'm not sure. But especially to combat the distrust of science that we've heard about, and also the elitism, maybe it is necessary to think about them. So I would like to ask you both, just initially, just to reflect, when you hear the term responsibilities of scientists, what do you think of? Luis, do you want to go first?
Well, okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm very glad to be here. There are several levels of responsibility, of course. The most obvious one, maybe, is responsibility towards truth. We should, we should not tell things that we are doing. We should not try to tell them in a way that they seem different from what their relevance really is. So that's very important. Of course, the system of evaluation of science sometimes encourages that, like publishing many papers, and instead of just assembling them in one important paper, things like that. But I think scientists should stick to the main motivation for doing science, which is curiosity and passion for science.
Sorry, I'm just going to briefly stop you, because what you raise is such an important point. And when we talk to audiences of young scientists around the world, this pressure of the reward system in science is one of their main concerns. And I just wondered if we could just put the lights up. I wanted to get a show of hands. Who is worried about the reward system in science? Yeah, that's pretty much everybody. Yeah, that's a lot. Anyway, sorry. Thank you very much indeed. Just to, so it's a topic that resonates with the audience.
Right.
So I didn't mean to.
So, and the responsibility of scientists, in fact, which is difficult to pursue in view of this system we have, is really to concentrate on the importance of her or his research. Doing things that one thinks are useful, are important to do, and being motivated by this main thing that motivated us to go into science in the first place, which is just curiosity, passion for science. That's it. And I think that if one follows that, eventually we might be rewarded or not. But just doing that, satisfying our curiosity, and getting into the mysteries of the universe is already a reward. It's a huge reward. I think of the people who first found out about how the micro world works, the people who founded quantum physics. Were they worried about getting an award afterwards? I don't think so. If you look at it, if you see their dialogues, they were amazed by what they were finding out. Nature was not like one knows just from looking at it. If you have a better perspective, you see that there are faces of nature that are completely different from our intuition. And knowing that, discovering that, is already a bigger reward. So I think that one of the responsibilities of scientists is just to stick to that, to stick to their basic motivation, and consider that discovering new things is the best award of them all. Okay, so that's one point.
Beautiful.
And I do have some other remarks, but
let's bring Maybrit in and we'll come back. Please, Maybrit.
Come back.
Thank you. No, of course, Luis, I agree completely with what you say. So I feel responsible as a scientist both to ask the important questions, as you say, and also a sort of tidy the field. And when I say it, I'm so ashamed because it seems like, oh, I'm this arrogant person who can tidy a field. But as you say, honesty is so extremely important. So to occlude a field by publishing studies that are not worth publishing at the stage they are, instead of waiting until you know that this is solid. I think that is one responsibility. Another responsibility is that I personally lead a lab where we use animals. And I'm almost part of animal liberation group because I'm so fond of animals. So it's extremely important for me to respect the animals that we use, treat them in a beautiful way. That is my responsibility. So they live in enriched environments. We give them names so that we treat them in a good way. And I feel I have the responsibility to take care of the lab, the institute, like a family. To support them, to respect them, and see them. And I think if we all try to encourage good discussions, that is also part of my responsibility, I think.
So, sorry, we'll come back to the building the environment, the supportive environment in the next panel. But this, yes,
wrong answer.
Right answer, because this responsibility to behave ethically at every level is a big one, but very, very well said. Thank you.
Okay, I would like to add 2 points to it, this responsibility of the scientists. First, perhaps a more obvious one again, it's the ethical point. Of course, in some fields that's more important than in other fields, but if you work, for instance, on biology having to do with intervention in the DNA, you must have some ethical rules, and you should follow these rules. I remember the book of Aldous Huxley, the
Brave New World.
Yeah, the New World. And so should parents choose the colors of the eyes of the children, or whether they will be athletic? So there are many ethical questions related to that. Same with artificial intelligence, of course. Many ethical questions which are aggravated by the fact that usually those who have more power in some country or in the world can have more power to administrate these new technologies. And that could be dangerous for humanity. So we need these ethical rules. That's the first point. The second point is to use science to break the walls of prejudice, the walls of war. And I have some examples of that. One example was in Brazil, during a time in which there was a military dictatorship in Brazil and another one in Argentina. And there were rumors, which were actually noticed to be true afterwards, that both countries were interested in developing nuclear arms. Okay? There was some secret projects. And the Brazilian Physical Society, together with the Argentinian Physical Society, signed a memorandum saying that no physicist should be involved in those projects. And really, it was a very strong document saying that, people who get involved in that will not be supported by our associations. Okay? And that was the end of it. That was the end of it. So I think that's also the responsibility of scientists. And the second example I would like to give is, I am a member of the World Academy of Sciences, which was founded by Abdul Salam, the same person who founded Trieste, as Serge Haroche mentioned. And TWAS has a very interesting work towards developing countries. And it has a program together with the Inter-Academy Partnership, which is called Science in Exile. In a world in war, that's a very interesting and important responsibility of scientists to help our fellow scientists who are in these countries on war. And in fact, to us, IAP, the National Academy of Science in the United States, help these people, help to relocate these people in other places. And I think that's our responsibility too, to go through these walls of prejudice and even be able to talk and do science, which is a universal language, with people on the other side of the wall.
Please.
I have a comment on that. This is so exciting and interesting because especially receiving the Nobel Prize, then people treat me and other Nobel Prize winners as oracles and also people who can push in politics. And that's dangerous because I'm not trained in politics, but I have a good heart. So to find the balance, where should I involve myself and where should I not involve myself? I know I'm a good scientist, and I'm not ashamed to say that, but I'm not a good politician because I have no clue about politics. Still, when people ask, especially now with the war in Ukraine, I was asked, can you please become the ambassador for science and education in Ukraine? And that I said yes, because that is my field.
Sure.
And of course, when people are in war, then that they're desperate for more knowledge and education. Mm-hmm. They need to live their daily lives with support. So, but it's so difficult to find this balance. What is my responsibility? Can I just lock myself in my lab and enjoy life?
Yeah, it's such a complicated question, but what's so good is that the two of you are talking about it now, and that's so important, just to raise the conversation, raise the idea. I would like very much to bring in our young scientist contributors. So if they can join me on stage, we have 3 young scientists. Lucia Del Valle from Chile, Eloisa Paterno from Brazil, and Isaac Diaz from Costa Rica. Please. Hi. Thank you very much indeed. Great. So, these are 3 of...
I think it's not.
Sorry. Why don't you start? I can introduce you. Oh, we're working again. We held a lovely project with the Brazilian Academy of Sciences and the Inter-American Network of Academies of Sciences. We held a lovely project during the pandemic when we brought young scientists from all over Latin America and the Caribbean together with laureates virtually. And it's so nice to have 3 of those participants here in person to continue the conversation. The floor is yours. Who wants to go first?
Well, I can start.
Good.
So it's, like I said, it's really nice to be here in person. Like when we had the conversation back then in 2021, we had like 1 hour, 1 hour and a half conversations. And to have a longer dialogue here in the Nobel Dialogue, it's a really special opportunity. And we were all like, since today early, talking about science. And it's really nice to be in this environment where people are discussing it and also discussing how to get it to people who are not discussing science, right?
Thank you very much indeed. So do you have questions or comments on this question of responsibilities?
Yeah, I think I have one regarding responsibilities, because I believe I heard Mayrit say that it's important to embrace having different people coming, for example, to your lab, and accepting that some people can know more than one about on other topics. I think I would like to know, how would you balance between knowing about a lot of topics, to be responsible of a lot of things, that what you were saying just before we got in here, and for example, getting someone different, for example, from communication to help, for example, your lab to spread the word about your findings, or something like the balance between my responsibility as a scientist to take care of the diffusion of my findings, for example, but also to be responsible of having some people that really knows and are formed in that field, for example, in diffusion of science. Or
Thank you. Should I answer already? Thank you for that question. So, and thank you for repeating what I said, that I'm not afraid of, or Edward and I, since we share the lab, Edward Moser, we are not afraid to get people to the lab who know so much more than ourselves in mathematics or computer modeling or in molecular biology or whatever. But we need the general knowledge so that we know that these people don't go wild. Because it's our responsibility that the work that is going out of the lab, that we understand, even though we don't understand all the details, we couldn't make a model, but we understand the value and we can discuss the model and discuss the parameters and all these things. So that's one thing. So we have to learn fast to follow the people in our lab. That's one thing. And the second thing is absolutely communication. So we have a communication department in our institute, and we try to work with them to facilitate the way we can communicate our science, because we live on people's tax money that they pay to the government, and then we have to pay back. And then we need help to enrich the brains of the people who are paying.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Maj-Britt. Isaac, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think that this matter of science communication is even something that we should think about as a public affair responsibility. We're working with money from the states, and we have a responsibility to share that to the society. And I think that maybe this science communication topic is something that people are bored of hearing now. We've talked about that a lot, but I think it should be thinking a different perspective. So science communication we shouldn't be thinking about it in a way that is just limited to sharing certain concepts like the structure of DNA or the scientific method, or even whether vaccines cause autism or not. But we should.
It doesn't.
It doesn't. But we should think about it as how the different cultures and societies explain the world. Understanding the meaning-making factor of scientific communication, we can then tap into how important it is as a tool to tap into the identities and imaginations of the different societies. That way we can get further into what we share, and we can get all those little things we get excited about that could be ridiculous sometimes to the general public, and let them know what we're doing, and let them be a little bit more engaged with what we want to say, what we do, and make them understand that this is not reserved to an elite. Whether it's intellectual or socioeconomic, it concerns them too.
Yep, beautifully said.
Luis, could I just comment on some very, very short thing here? Because I was in Costa Rica doing a conference with Yuri Bushaki about time, and we discussed how do you communicate time? And then we who read from left to right, we think time from left to right, but if you make these comics, you can turn it upside down, and then for people who read from right to left, then it makes sense. And that was such an eye-opener for me. Of course I knew it, but to know the person you communicate with, how that person is thinking and perceiving the world is so important. Sorry, Luis. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. And you mentioned something very important, because it's not just the question of communicating what we know for the people, but you mentioned we should listen to the different cultures and the different people who are in a country. Okay? And of course, as you have noticed from today's opening of the conference, Brazil is an amazing place with a diversity of cultures, and many Latin American countries have this wealth as well. So I think, we as scientists should also listen. And what does that mean specifically in Brazil? Well, this is also a theme for the next session on what society can do for science. But anyway, I'll start here because it's related to what you have just said and very well said, okay? So, I do believe that a big wealth in Brazil is our biodiversity, which, by the way, part of it is being destroyed by other competitions, economic competitions, biodiversity. And there are people in Brazil who know a lot about diversity. They know a lot about plants that may have some medical benefit. They know about the forest, how to keep the forest up a lot. These are the indigenous people. Okay? So, we should also listen to them. We should also listen to them. And I should tell you that, I'm very proud of that. When I was president of the Brazilian Academy of Sciences, we have a category of members which are called, it's like corresponding members, but we call them collaborators. People who have done lots of things for science, but they are not scientists. And the most recent collaborator of the Brazilian Academy of Sciences is David Schopenhauer, he's a shaman, a chief of the Yanomami tribe. Davi was the name given to him by the missionaries who were there. But when they get to be teenagers, they can choose a name. And he chose Schopenhauer. Why? Because Schopenhauer is the name of a wasp in the region, which is horrible, it's like a warrior. And so he chose his name. And then the Brazilian government wanted them to register. So all of them register as a family name, Yanomami. So he's Davi Schopenhauer Yanomami. Now, he wrote a book. His book is translated into French and English and Portuguese, of course. And the title of the book is The Fall of the Sky. He talked about this book in Harvard with an interpreter and also in the British Parliament. Okay? And this book is about their myths, and one of their myths is that, if the taller trees in the forest fall or are cut, the sky falls on the earth. And when the sky falls on the earth, the water in the rivers goes to the center of the earth, so everything dries out. We talk nowadays about climate change. They were talking about that 1,000 years ago. Okay? So, I just want to make this comment because, that's it. We should convey what we know, and we know science, but beyond science, there is knowledge. Knowledge is different from science, and we should listen to the knowledge, because the knowledge could be the input for new science. For instance, for the science of biodiversity.
Thank you. Please, Aloysia.
And I also think that we can get this knowledge from people who know more about us who are not in science. And we can also make science more accessible so that some of these people can become scientists and help create scientists and transform this knowledge and continuing research. And I think this talks a bit, it touches a bit on the topic of diversity that we talked in the morning in other panels. And it's a really important topic to me. And I wanted to discuss a bit as well about diversity, because like we talked in the morning, it's everyone's responsibility to promote and look for and seek diversity and seek these different inputs to create science, to make science even more inclusive, diverse, and better. And how can scientists, because I believe scientists can also do that, help this as well. Because if each person of us can do a bit to make science more inclusive, then what can scientists do? What can we do in our jobs that includes more people, that is more sensitive to someone's needs, whether they are from different racial or economic or other kinds of backgrounds, and how can we include those people so that they can come into this research, and we can then also make science have more kinds of inputs to be able to move forward and create progress.
It's a question for everybody in the audience, but Maybrit, do you want to have a quick?
So I almost felt like sending the question back. But it's extremely important, but so difficult. But it's also about respect for questions. So I think if you start with children, all children that I know about, at least, and I think it's in general, are curious.
Yeah.
And with curiosity, there are questions. And then we adults, when we are approached with questions, we get nervous. And then when we get nervous, we don't have an answer. And if we don't have an answer, either you are honest and say, oh, I have no clue, but we can go together and check, we can discuss, and maybe we can find a good answer that is okay. Or we can become arrogant. Why do you ask such a stupid question? And you know, when children are met with arrogance from adults who are afraid to show that they don't know the answer, that is killing curiosity. And we need people to be curious, because if we allow people to be curious and to ask questions and explore the questions together with people, then I think maybe that can help to include more people, and especially to work with the young ones. I don't know if that was a good answer.
I don't think there is a right and wrong answer. I think there's only efforts that we all can do.
Exactly.
But just taking that point about the difficulty of answering questions from children and changing children to politicians, you two are in the position of power in that you both speak to politicians, they seek your advice. And they, of course, want clear answers when often the clear answers are not available. So where does the responsibility of scientists lie when you're talking to people who are desperately seeking answers, like politicians? How do you address that? Very briefly, because Louise?
Okay, so I don't know if you would like to start, because you told me a story, but I can do it fast.
Okay.
So I was very lucky a week ago. Then the Norwegian Academy invited the Prime Minister, the Science Minister, and somebody else. And Edward and I, we were allowed to sit like this. The Prime Minister was sitting there with his crew and writing when we were answering questions. And it felt really good, because then we could have a good discussion, and they were listening. And then afterwards, we had a dinner where they said no journalists will report. And then we had an even better discussion. What do scientists or science need in Norway? So it was a good fun, but I know you have both good and bad experience with politics.
True.
Sure.
Well, you know, I was president of the Brazilian Academy of Science for 2 mandates. And I was very happy that I was succeeded by Helena Nader, the first woman president of the Brazilian Academy of Science since the foundation of the Academy, 170 or 108 years ago. Now, I would say that while president of the Brazilian Academy, especially in the last period, I had one crisis a day, at least. Okay? And we had to tell people that they should take the vaccine against COVID. You know, things that I never imagined that I would be saying that was important. You know, I just saw the other day, there was a research in the United States, and I think that's even more true in other countries. You know, the percentage of people in the United States who believe 3 things: that the Earth is flat, that the moon landing was fake, and that vaccines inject microchips in your body.
Nanotechnology.
10% of the people believe that. Okay? 10% of 300 million well, you make the calculation, okay? So how do you fight against that? And I think it's our responsibility to do that, to clarify the people about what science says about it, but it's very difficult to do it. And what I learned as president of Brazilian Academy of Sciences, that you don't need just bright biologists or physicists. You need social science for that. You need psychology for that.
You need to calm people
calm
down.
people down. And but you need also to understand why they are doing that, why they are aggregating around these questions. So that's a very important mission for science to understand, social science.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. We have limited time. I really want to get just a very few comments from the audience. Is there anything burning that you need to say before we move on? You're allowed to, but it has to be very short.
I was wondering, because yesterday with Eloise, we were talking about how this curiosity that you can see really clearly in children, it's like dying with the years, you know? You start really curious about the world because you don't know nothing about the world and you really want to explore and everything, and that seems to shut down as the years go by, and we wanted to know, like, how, why, and how can we prevent that from happening?
That's a question for the neuroscientist, Maybrit. Have you solved that yet?
Yeah, no, as I said, first of all, the children have to feel safe. Because if they're not safe, they are afraid and they're not calm. And if you are not calm, it's very difficult to learn. Then, as I said, to respect all the questions. So I wanted to comment on that. We made sort of a joke of people who believe that and that. I'm sorry I'm saying it like this. And even though we don't believe that the Earth is flat and so on, that's fine that some people believe it, but then we should try to respect and understand where does it come from that they believe that the Earth is flat. And if we understand that, maybe there is a chance to increase curiosity. Why do you believe that it's round? And then we can have discussion. And the scary thing now is that since we are fed with information that suits our views, I'm never, or almost never, exposed to flat Earth. But if we are exposed to flat Earth more and more and more, so it's so polarized, and we need to talk across these borders, I think. But how to do that, I have no clue.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, we've talked about a lot, but there are a lot of other things to talk about under responsibilities. Please, I'd just love to have people make quick comments or questions, just maybe introducing us to some responsibilities we haven't thought about yet. Go ahead, please, quickly. In English or Portuguese. If it's Portuguese, we'll have to have it translated. Yes, please.
Boa tarde, eu sou Isabel. Eu moro em São Paulo, aqui no Brasil. E eu não sou professora nas universidades e nem pesquisadora, mas eu dou aulas no meu curso de neuroeducação perceptiva para estudantes e professores de pessoas de todas as idades. Mas os que mais vêm me buscar, vêm buscar as minhas aulas, são as pessoas neurodivergentes, superdotadas, e as pessoas com condições neurológicas diversas, em busca de uma melhoria de aprendizagem. E o que eu gostaria de perguntar para a May, como que ela lida com essa questão, se no laboratório, na área dela, ela tem pessoas neurodivergentes, como que ela lida em relação a essas diferenças dessas pessoas em relação à aprendizagem, à pesquisa.
I have to stop you. We have to be really short. Has the point been made yet? I'm sorry to be so stupid not to understand.
Can I translate?
Yes, please.
Yes, so I'm going to summarize a bit. She's asking about neurodivergency and if in the lab we have neurodivergent people and how can we include those people as well. I think that's a bit of the question.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's good because we haven't got much time. Yeah. How can we include neurodivergent people? Again, you're the psychologist, Maybrit. Can you?
say the question.
Neurodivergent people. How do we be more inclusive of neurodivergent people?
So just to include all kinds of people, or yeah?
Those who are particularly neurodivergent.
Yeah, particularly people who have different, like they have special needs.
Or
like people,
disabilities, you mean?
Yeah, but not necessarily.
Okay, sorry.
Like depends on how we view it.
Yeah,
She's a
yeah,
professor
yeah.
and she deals with people like that.
Okay. No, so, you know, I had a very eye-opening experience when I was teaching psychology students. And I typically would stand there and point and say, look here, look here, look here. And then there was a student in the class and say, I don't see. Can you please explain? And then I was so ashamed that I didn't understand. But then she taught me that I should think about that not everybody can see what I can see, but still I can tell what I see to her and to others. So I agree that we just have to be more aware of how, like you said also, how other people are thinking so that we can communicate in a good way.
Thank you very much indeed. Please, yes. In English or Portuguese?
English.
Thank you.
My name is Mauricio. I'm social science from Rio de Janeiro. And I'm very difficult question. Bioethics.
Bioethics.
About ER plus chip in the brain. You understand? No. É a bioética em relação a
artificial intelligence,
chip no cérebro
and
ER.
Microchips in the brain, and
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah,
the
that's
ethics
pretty.
around that.
Do you the ethics around enhancement of humans broadly? The responsibilities of scientists regarding experiments that are hypothetical at the moment, but will become reality. Very, very briefly, Luis.
Yeah,
Margaret?
so it's a brilliant question, and I think, like you said, we have the responsibility to be ethical, and if, like hearing implants, if you can help people to hear who didn't hear, that's important. And if you put a chip in the hippocampus, it doesn't help. You might be able to load new memories, but you can't load the old memories. So do what could help people, but don't do what would make it worse.
Luis.
Yeah, you know, this goes beyond that. We are worried about chips in the brain. Now, technology, biology now has the possibility of intervening into the DNA of people. That's curing diseases that are considered not curable a while ago, like, for instance, sickle cell anemia, okay? Some kinds of children's lack of vision, for instance, okay? And that's great. But, you know, as this evolves, these questions will come up. Up to what point should we go to change the present human species, which, by the way, was selected along a long history. So.
And what's the very, very briefly, what's the best way of answering that question? How far should we go? Who should answer the question?
I think the best way is, you know, we have an example of that. The people who discovered this DNA intervention, the so-called CRISPR technology, they have held many conferences worldwide on ethics. And I think that should be discussed, not just among scientists, but scientists and other people in the society. And that's a discussion one must have. That's new. There's something new that's happening. And we are not going to solve that without discussion involving many people. Not, you know, from top down, but from down to top.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to let you all three of you come in again very briefly at the end. Last comments. So, yep.
Gabriel Coimbra from Vale do Rio Doce University, and I'm a medicine doctor, and not a PhD doctor yet, but I will be there one day. So I'm also a volunteer on Red Cross Brazilian Society, and I would like to know what's about the importance of volunteer work as science.
Thank you.
As human beings, not just as science.
Yeah, that's a very good point. scientists as human beings, the importance of volunteering, doing stuff other than being the expert in the science. In a way, you're needed for your science. Do you have time? Do scientists have time to be human?
No, but so I think it's important that people do what they're good at. So that is what I said yes to be the ambassador for science and education in Ukraine, because that I can do. But to go in the field and repair wounds like a doctor, like you can do, I can't. So then that is not the way for me to do that. But of course, there's a limit. So I need to put the forces into what I'm good at. And then also at voluntary work, giving lectures, for example.
Thank you. I might jump on to the next question. Guy in white, and when you finish, could you give it to the lady in green behind you? Go, please. Oh. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Victor. I'm a medical student here at this university and a researcher here as well. I have two questions. The first one is, what do you think are the biggest medical science challenges today? And the second one is, what advice would you give to your younger selves regarding responsibility?
I think I might. The first one is so big. Could you pass it to the green lady in green behind you? Sorry.
Thank you.
The first one is so big. Maybe we can have time for that later in different panels. What advice would you give to yourself regarding responsibility of scientists? That's a very challenging question.
It is, yes.
Okay, very brief, Luis, and then Margaret. What advice would you give to yourself?
Well, I don't know, I'm not sure I understood the question. Could you repeat it?
What advice would you give to yourself regarding the responsibilities of scientists? I suppose, what do you wish you'd done different? Or do different?
Oh, as a young one?
No, it can be now, anytime.
Oh, now.
Anytime. What advice?
To anybody?
No, to yourself.
Oh, to my. Okay, that's a very good question. Very good question.
It's a very good question.
Well, I think, it's a difficult situation for the employee of time, I would say. But I have done this. I have some experience in that. And what I will tell myself is that I should continue to do that. In other words, I should try to do good science, be in the lab. I'm a theoretical physicist, so my lab is the computer, eventually notebook, because that's part of me. And at the same time, do volunteer work, like it was mentioned, not necessarily in the forest, but in the cities, in the country, in support for science. And I think I should continue to do that.
Thank you. Margaret, very briefly.
I would like to hear from the three instead.
Okay, good. That's the question for you that we're going to finish on. I'm just going to hear from this lady in green.
Yeah.
Please.
I would like to know, especially to David, how can we, as students and the university, can support the diverse people that are in science?
How can we support
the people like all genders and races and all classes? How can they stay in science?
The question is, yeah, it's one that keeps coming up throughout the day. How do universities nurture the most diverse possible group of people? And could we have a 10-second answer?
Well, look at basic education. Start with basic education. Okay? That's the main problem in Brazil right now. That's it.
Start there. That's a good point. Okay, you three. You end with you got 15 seconds each. What advice would you give to yourself regarding responsibility? Having listened to this and having thought about it?
I think I have an idea, and in just one word, I think it's curiosity. To keep being curious is what I would do. Advise myself to stay curious.
Don't forget we go all around the world talking to young people with Nobel laureates, and I often feel that the main task we have is to remind young scientists why they got into science in the first place, not to become too bogged down in their career and their publication, blah, blah, but just, yeah, so I think I agree. Eloisa.
I am very worried about making the places that we do science in inclusive to all people, so that all people can feel represented, but also that they can feel well when they are doing science. Like when you are working in a lab, you want that to be a safe environment, like Maybrit was saying, in schools. And we may think about schools, I think it's, like I said, the basic education is such a big problem, and we have to create a safe environment for kids. But also for adults who are in science, we have to make a safe environment for that, like the question that we had about neurodivergency. We have to make a safe space for autistic people, for ADHD people, for OCD people, for gifted people, and a lot of other differences that we have among the population. And my main concern is that we are falling short on that, and we have to work better to improve the way we deal with those things.
Thank you very much indeed. Isaac Glasswood.
I think that my advice to everyone and to my younger self is probably following what May said earlier. It is leaving arrogance behind. We need to understand that we don't know anything, and probably we can learn more from the people on the street than from people we can find here. We don't know anything. We have to be humble and understand that there are different kinds of knowledge, and that openness to hearing people can make us better professionals and humans.
Thank you very much indeed. I love the idea that you have to give advice to your younger self. You seem pretty young to me already.
I feel old, but probably most people wouldn't agree. You've obviously got
life sorted out more than I have. I'm still needing to give myself advice all the time. Anyway, I wish we could continue. We've gone over time, which is not good for me especially. So we need to stop and get ready for the next panel. But thank you all very much indeed. And thank you, audience. And I'm sorry we didn't have time for more questions.